Well, hey,
So
it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
it is my pleasure. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we get into your life, globetrotting and seeing the world, I want to begin with we're coming up on the 4-year anniversary of the pandemic. How did
hmm
you get through the pandemic and how did it subsequently change you?
Gosh, it was really hard. As a travel content person,
Yeah.
there were some dark days and truly a whole year where I thought, I might have to go back to what I did before. I might have to go back to PR agency work or, go back to full time something and not, maybe I don't get to do this anymore.
Yeah.
But travel came back with a vengeance
Yeah.
and everybody who stuck it out is doing just as well as we were before. We're getting back there
Yeah.
and there's just new opportunities and I know a lot of people see things a different way. I do too. Just
Yeah.
sort of we might not have all the time in the world. We never know when we're going to get the rug pulled out from under us again. And having seen it happen like that, where the world shut down, and I never would have imagined something like that in my worst nightmares, right? I never would have guessed or foreseen that. So you just never know. And that kind of it goes with my whole life motto of travel when you're young
Yeah.
and don't put everything off because you just don't know what's coming.
Yeah, you don't. I
Don't let
remember
that worry you.
traveling before 9/11 happened and how easy it was. You
Yeah.
could just fly in, check.
Roll on up to the plane.
No
Yeah.
big deal. No big deal. And then 9/11, and then now especially, like I went through TSA in Tampa. I believe I was in Tampa. Yeah, and it was crazy. It was like I knew that I had to get there like an hour and a half, 2 hours early, and it was just like,
Yeah.
wow,
It's
it's weird, really weird.
it's changed a lot. I think about that every time I talk to a younger audience
Yeah.
who just doesn't have a clue how different things are. And
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm no spring chicken, but I'm not I wouldn't consider myself old. I guess I might should start thinking about that, but so much has changed in my
Yep.
lifetime. Just if
Mhm.
we look at travel, how it
Yep.
used to be, how it is now, taking our shoes off and getting all groped every time you go through TSA, just that's different. And
Yep.
now there's masks and there's hand sanitizer and different countries have different protocols and if you want to go on a cruise, what's the protocol? There's just so much to consider. It's
Yeah.
not quite so easy as it used to be. If you
No.
had the money, you could just kind of go somewhere.
Yeah, for
Think
sure.
about nothing.
Yeah. Well, let's get to the heart and soul of what you do for a living. So I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders. It's career day, and one of the kids says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
Well, I think the kids usually appreciate that I'm Insta famous. My adopted daughter really, really enjoys that. All the foster kids we've ever had think the coolest thing about me is that I have a blue check on Instagram,
Yes.
which I'm like, that is the least cool thing about me, but all right. If it
Yeah.
gives me street cred, fine.
Yep.
Um, yeah, so I'm a professional content creator. I host stuff on TV. I'm a podcast host for AAA. I basically travel the world and then come home and tell people about it in lots of different formats. So I help people travel better and safer and cheaper to the best places. And and that's the gist of it. And now I have a book coming out. So
Wow. So let me ask you this. What did you want to be in the third grade?
oh, that's a very good question. Probably, I would guess a marine biologist, aka dolphin trainer,
Yeah.
because that was sort of my generation. That's what
Yeah.
we were into, and being a Floridian, it just seemed like the obvious choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got a fun story for you real quick, a travel story. I went backpacking in Europe right around September 11th. I left the States for a a trip to Paris on the 4th. And I was going to go through all these different areas and Cinque Terre, the poor man's Riviera, and Venice. And I ended up being in the back of a water taxi in Venice when 9/11 happened. But
Oof.
this is the weird thing. Do you remember Rick Steves on PBS? Okay, so we did a lot of research on Rick Steves, bought the books, got him from the library. We get in Vernazza and he's right there filming a segment. And we're like, what? Hold on a second.
How exciting.
Is that Rick Steves? And he's right there. He's doing his segment. It's like, how cool is that? Like, of all of the globetrotting that he does, like
Oh, yeah.
I should have got a lottery ticket that day, but I was
Yeah.
in such shock because that was, I think, a few days after it, and my flight didn't exist back home. Everything was turned upside down. I ended
Yeah.
up having to go to Gatwick, and the French Foreign Legion was everywhere. It was a different world. It was wild, you know. But landing in St. Louis, I think a few days after I was supposed to come home, from the back of the plane, someone started clapping and it made its way through the whole vestibule all the way
Mm,
to the front. It was like raucous by the time it got up front. So we were
yeah.
all pretty happy to be back in America, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, when things change so quick and we don't have any answers, remember
Yeah.
those early days? We just didn't know. We didn't know
Yeah.
who, we didn't know why, and we didn't know if things were changed forever, and in a lot of ways they have. But
Yeah.
how crazy to run into
It's
Rick Steves
so crazy.
out and about. Yeah,
Just unbelievable.
love that guy.
Absolutely. He's great. So,
Yeah.
how did this happen? Like, I'm always fascinated when people fall into these gigs that are dream gigs. I mean, this is like there has to be a level of this where there's no work. You're just living a dream. I mean,
One hope.
yeah, right, right, right. Well, I'm not cheapening. I'm just saying that what a dream gig. How did it happen?
I my degree is in public relations. So after college, I went and worked in PR agencies for several years, first in Atlanta, then in New York. And my New York job was actually in the travel practice of a huge global PR firm. So all my clients were travel. And
Yeah,
I was a big fan of traveling, but also poor because I was young and had student loans and was living in New York City on a pretty limited salary. So for me, it was my job was a really great way to get to travel on somebody else's dime. And
yeah,
even though it was so much work, at least I was on planes and out and about and meeting people and going to islands. It was really a good time. A few years later, I really accepted that I was never going to be able to travel as much as I wanted to or to the far flung destinations because I just couldn't find the time off of work. I
yeah,
had a good vacation package, but taking 2 weeks of PTO when you're a publicist is just not, it's not reasonable. It's never going to happen. So I had this idea. I'm going to travel. I'm going to quit for a year. I'm going to travel for a year, see everything I need to see, and then come home and get on with my life. Like be serious adult. I'd be 30 by then. I'm going to be a grown up. And I had it in my head that I needed to like get serious once I turned 30.
yeah,
So I had my little travel blog that I already started when I moved to New York, and I just kept it going throughout this year abroad. And I happened to be kind of right place, right time, front of the wave of social media. And because of all my experience in public relations and with all these travel clients, had a really good sense of what destinations needed from content creators. We weren't even called content creators then. We were just
yeah,
bloggers. And we didn't know what to do with bloggers from the PR side. And bloggers didn't know what they were doing. We
yeah,
didn't know what to offer. No one knew anything. We were figuring it out all together. So after a year of traveling, I was like, I cannot go back to a cubicle after seeing the world. After, I
uh-huh,
mean, 13 countries in a year, and I must have made hundreds of friends. And it was just so fun, hard in a lot of ways, but really fun and different and new every day. So I said, I'm going to keep doing this and see where it goes. And so just step by step, I grew the blog, and then Instagram came online, and then
yeah,
eventually we got to TikTok and all these different things. You just sort of add them on little by little and keep traveling and keep creating. And, all these years later, what is it, 12, 13 years later, I do this for a living
yeah,
and got to write a book about it and get to have a podcast. Like it's
yeah.
so exciting. And after you've been to so many places, you just sort of become this repository of knowledge. So I'm a good consultant on things. If people have a question about a place I've been, I can usually give some pretty decent advice. So I guess people find that pretty helpful, and I'm still here.
Well, I always think that those that get to travel a lot are like really kind of more immaculate, um, hipper lawyers. You know a little bit about everything. There's
Mhm.
so much that goes into your knowledge base. So your level of empathy and understanding the human condition has to be just really, really off the charts, seeing so many different cultures.
I think so. I think it was before I ever was a traveler, but I also think that's one of the reasons I love traveling so much is because every single person you meet gives you a little wider perspective on the world. And really, in the past probably 5 or 6 years, I've become very interested in people's wiring and personality types. And I'm that annoying person who sits by you on a plane and I'm trying to like figure you out. What's your Enneagram? What's your Myers-Briggs? Like, I'm so into what makes people tick and also the commonality in all that and how interesting it is to me that I can find someone out there that I don't know, but I can peg them as being very similar to me based on a few characteristics or a few stories that they tell me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I know your deal. I
Uh-huh.
know what your parents were like. I know
Uh-huh.
where you're from. And I love that.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's a fun hobby. Nothing I ever want to monetize, but it's
Yeah.
definitely fun to talk to people about. And then and you just figure out like, are you neurodivergent? That's a whole new world of stuff that I'm learning about. So I just love learning about people.
Yeah. So let me
Yeah.
ask you this. Of all of the places that you've been to, what was one of the most unexpectedly magical places?
Hmm.
Something that had a charm that you weren't really expecting and blew you away.
Magical, unexpected charm. Oh, that's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really tough. Because I go to most places pretty prepared and
Hmm.
I expect to have a pretty magical time everywhere
Yeah.
I go. I would say, I mean, if I had to pick like a country, maybe New Zealand.
Okay.
It's just a postcard everywhere you look, and it's so vast and just when you think of it like Narnia or The Hobbit, that whole Lord of the Rings world, which I do. I like to bring movies into all my destinations, and then I listen to the soundtracks. So I'm walking around the beaches
Yeah.
of New Zealand listening to the Narnia soundtrack, and I feel very magical. Whether it is that or not,
Right.
it helps. It definitely helps to get you in there
Yeah. So who's
in
been a
that state
hero?
of mind.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. No, I agree. My job is as an IT technician for a school district. So sometimes I'll walk into a room to fix something, and a teacher will have a soundtrack going, and it just bolsters everything I'm doing. I feel like I'm on the side of a mountain trying to fight for Scotland, and I'm just putting a bulb and a projector. But it
It makes a huge difference.
yes,
I forget to turn on music during the day a lot when I work, but depending on what I'm trying to write, it really helps me to pick a good soundtrack
yeah.
for the day, just an instrumental something, and I'll give my best tip. There's one song on the Game of Thrones soundtrack that if you need to write a strongly worded letter, that's the one.
There you go.
I have listened to that quite a lot in my day, and if my husband hears that song, he's like, "Uh-oh,
Yep,
it's going down, like,
that's it.
somebody's in trouble." Yeah,
The sound of a knife getting sharpened, you
pretty much.
know? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, who's a hero for you? Who's been an inspiration for you in your life?
Oh, wow. Like a travel hero would probably be someone like Samantha Brown,
Okay.
who she's like Rick Steves, but the female version, and she
Yeah.
traveled all around Europe. And when I was younger, I used to watch her show and think, "Oh, that's a dream job. I want to do that." So Samantha Brown definitely in that way. Gosh, I'm sure I'm forgetting 1,000 million people because there's just so many people I look up to. Really, any memoirist,
Yeah.
anybody who's putting their life out there kind of vulnerably. I
Yeah.
would say, just as an example, Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, she was very vulnerable in what she wrote. And now that I have one coming out, I'm like, how did you do it? Because I'm so nervous about that.
Yeah.
You can't be everyone's cup of tea, and that's just life. But if you're a people pleaser, you sure want to be.
That's
So
for sure.
everybody's not going to like your book, but you want everybody to like your
Uh-huh.
book. So there's the whole thing. And if you've ever seen somebody do something that you thought was great, but then read the reviews and everyone's like, this person is the worst person alive who knows nothing about art, then it can be demoralizing as an artist or a writer or whatever to put yourself out there. So yeah,
Yeah.
anybody who puts themselves out there vulnerably and can just take it, that that is a hero to me.
Yeah, that's a big deal. So, if you could meet one person alive on the planet right now that you find fascinating, who would it be? Who would you love to meet?
Oh, another excellent question.
Yeah.
Okay. Probably it used to be the queen, but she died, so it's not the queen anymore. I would say I'm gonna give you two because
Okay.
I have two very solid reasons. One would be Taylor Swift because I love her marketing mind, and she's also a nerd, which I just think we would get along, and she's a great writer, so I just, I feel like we would be pals in real
Yeah,
life. And then Britney Spears,
yeah,
because she needs my friendship. She
yeah.
really, she needs help, and she needs a
She
nice,
does.
honest person who is not trying to get anything from her. And I
Yeah,
feel like I can be that person for her. Like, I don't need anything
absolutely.
from her. I just want her to come live at my house, stay in my guest bedroom, and I want to like protect her from all these awful people.
She needs it. She needs it bad. I saw that movie about her conservatorship, and it's man,
It's really
it
that
is.
that is something that's happening in front of everyone and what can be done.
Yeah, for sure. So you'll be interested in this. We have all these street vendors here in Kansas City, and I got my wife an early Valentine's gift, and you'll appreciate this.
Oh, I love it.
Can you see it? Is it all
There it is. Yeah, that is
okay?
amazing.
Yeah, but it's awesome. I saw it the other day, and I was like, That's a snapshot in time. This is never going to happen again." And
No,
it's such a phenomenon. And when the parade happens Wednesday, there are going to be so many little girls out there that would never go out there.
it really opens the door for so many people who wouldn't care about the NFL. And like,
Yeah.
do you care about the NFL? No, but it's fun.
Uh-huh.
I've always been a football fan, but it's
Yeah.
extra fun now that
Yeah.
this collision of worlds. I love it. I think it's
Yeah.
fun. I'm happy for people who are happy. They just seem so dang happy. So
Yeah.
like I'm about that. Yay.
It's like, how are you going to fault these kids for falling in love?
Awesome.
And
I
I know
know.
that they're big shots, but it's like come on. They're supporting each other. They're there. They're giddy.
It's adorable.
it's what all of these books and songs and artwork, it's everything's made out of that. How
It's
can you
like
not
a
like
rom-com. You could not write it better.
Oh,
And the fact
man.
that so many of us grew up, like our romantic lives kind
Uh-huh.
of went with Taylor's albums, right? So I had my heart broken to all those songs, and I sang those songs at the top of my lungs about guys that broke my heart. So to see her happy is
Yeah.
just like it's a happy ending for everybody.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
It's that happy ending everybody wants. And I think if people can't just be happy about it or just don't talk about it, if it bothers you, just shut up.
That's it.
It's not that serious.
I know. It's not a big deal. It's a
No,
good Hallmark
like it or
gloss.
don't.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, let me ask you this. If we get off this call and a time machine pulls up in front of your house and you can go to one place in history and see one human event with your own
Alright.
eyes, what do you want to witness?
One human event,
One thing.
to be honest, creation. Because then I could come back and be like, listen, here's what happened. Here's the
Uh-huh.
deal.
Yes.
Here's the science behind it. Here's like how it matches up with beliefs. And here's the deal. I'm right. And now everybody can stop arguing and we have a foundation to
That's
all
it.
agree on
We
something.
we can move
Yes.
on. We
Yes.
we, we have
Definitely.
answers. Because
Yeah. I'm sure there's other things, but that one I feel like would set the tone for the rest of the world and
yeah.
it could be helpful.
Absolutely. So, what is your motivator every day to get up, to do the job that you do, and to evolve as a human? What is that ultimate motivation for you?
Mm. I think it probably changes a little bit every day. I love to create stuff that is either helpful or makes somebody laugh. I'm getting to be able to do that a lot more now that I'm podcasting and now that I've written a book because that's such a different kind of communicating, different kind of storytelling than having a website that's really focused on reader intent and SEO and keywords. And those are the kind of things you have to think about when you write a helpful travel article. But
Yeah.
it's nice when I can make somebody laugh with a story of something that was really embarrassing for me at the time or heartbreaking or whatever. I like to help people feel seen
Yeah.
and not alone because it can be a very isolating existence if you don't know that everybody else out there is kind of going through the same stuff one way or another. So
Yeah.
I like to help people feel less isolated.
Have you seen that special that Rainn Wilson put out there about getting happy and going to all these different places in the world to see why they're happy?
I haven't watched it, but it's on my to watch list.
You should, and especially as one that's a connoisseur of travel. The first place he goes to is Iceland, and they are some of the happiest people on the
Okay.
planet, and I just didn't expect it, but he's just like, everywhere you look, it's just breathtaking, and it's wild, you know?
Mhm.
And then, of course, the Bulgarians are just a little bit upset all the time about everything, and they just kinda go through all of these different places that you just
Yes.
wouldn't expect, and what makes them happy, and there's this simplicity, there's this just base that especially the Icelandic people come from, that just makes them cool with it all. And the weather changes a lot, so they're adaptable. They just really kind of dug into the social psychology of it all, and I thought it's definitely worth a watch.
That is right up my alley because
Yeah,
I love to look at a people, a culture, and say, how does that affect all of them?
yeah,
Sure, there's individuals, but how what's their general vibe, you know?
yeah.
Like, Germans are often known to be quite serious
Uh-huh.
and quite direct, and yeah, I love knowing that about a destination, and
Mhm.
so you could really when you meet someone from there, you can instantly kind of clock, like, "They're not being rude to me.
Right.
This is cultural versus" and same thing, like, when you think about going to Paris.
Yeah,
I don't think the Parisians are particularly rude. I think they're just not bothered
yeah.
by all this other whatever, like, we're in Paris, so what? And, of course, we're, like, starry, wide-eyed, "I'm in
Uh-huh.
Paris," and they're like, "Please stop. Get over
Yeah.
yourself."
Uh-huh.
So it's cultural. I can't take that personally, but it
Yeah,
is interesting, so I'm gonna have to
yeah.
watch that.
It's fascinating for sure. So of all of the things that you've done and become and evolved into, what are you the proudest of?
Professionally, um,
Yeah,
probably the book. It took so long.
yeah.
It's such a it's such a hard thing to do to get an
Mhm.
agent, and then it's an even harder thing to do to get a book deal. So I think I mean, and then writing the thing.
Yeah,
Writing a good book that I know people will like and that people are already reviewing really well. Like, I'm proud of that. That was probably the biggest project I've ever done as far as how long it took and just how much effort. So it has to be the book,
yeah.
I would think. Yeah.
So everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show.
Mhm.
What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Hmm. I'm a marshmallow, probably, that everybody thinks is a like a rock, you know?
Yeah,
I come across as pretty tough and have everything together, but I'm pretty overwhelmed all the time, and I'm good at juggling, and I'm
yeah,
resilient, but definitely always overwhelmed. I
yeah.
probably have more anxiety than people would guess, and I also am pretty fearful.
Mhm.
It's something I deal with a lot, just anxiety and fear and worry and nervousness, and that's not super helpful when your job is traveling. When
Yeah,
every time you get on a plane, you're like, "Well, is this the end?"
yeah,
And that's you get intrusive thoughts, so kind of fighting with my natural wiring
yeah.
sometimes to be in the career that I'm in.
That's interesting. I would have not expected that. That's wild. That's very
Yeah.
revelatory. Yeah, you would figure that you're the type that's just like, I'm gonna go jump out of an airplane. Let's go. That kind of a thing.
Golly. No, no. I mean, I do a lot of things scared,
Yeah,
and that's just part of it. I think I've gotten used to having anxiety just like as a imaginary friend who hangs around and follows me around, and I just do my best to acknowledge and then like, okay, well, I have things to do.
yeah,
So
yeah, and then move on.
I have things to do.
So if anyone wants to get your book, if anyone wants to delve into your adventures, reach out, anything about your world, where do they go?
Everything in the whole world about me is on angieaway.com.
Okay.
And all my socials are Angie Away. And the book is called Flirting with Disaster. And it's available everywhere you buy books as of March 12th. And you
Okay.
can pre order it now. But yeah, I'm about to start the book tour and
That's excellent. And
next
in the
chapter.
context of when the world shut down 4 years ago, that was around March 12th. So what a nice little bonus to have
Yeah.
this book on travel and to hit the road and to do it upright. So this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for your story. Thank you for your time. Enjoy your travels and keep on making the world a brighter place.
Thank you for having me. This has been really fun.
Absolutely. Thank you.